Flashbulbs came first. Then her own name shouted from every direction, in a way she couldn't yet tell apart from an accusation. Reporters pressed against a barricade outside a Seoul film studio, phones raised above their heads, voices colliding in Korean and English. Inside a black car with tinted windows, Zuri Njeri pressed her forehead against the cool glass and watched her own face flash across a stranger's phone screen. Grainy, cropped, captioned with a headline she couldn't read fast enough to know whether it would end her or crown her. 9 months earlier, she had been nobody. Production assistant. A girl who arranged flowers beneath billboards for a living. Nobody had known her name. Tonight, apparently everyone did, and she genuinely did not yet know if that was the best thing that had ever happened to her or the worst. Welcome to Story Nest Tales. If you're new here, kindly like, subscribe, and comment. Now stay with us because this story begins 9 months earlier with a kiss that was never supposed to be seen. The exhibition hall in Gangnam had been under construction for 6 weeks, and by the night before its grand opening, it finally looked the way the designers had promised. Enormous glass panels rose to the ceiling. Screens the size of buses played silent trailers on a loop. And along the northern wall stood a billboard so large it made the workers beneath it look like ants. A 15-meter image of Cha Hyun-woo, Korea's most streamed actor, staring down with the practiced half-smile that had launched 1,000 fan pages. Zuri stood on a small ladder beneath it, arranging the last of the white orchids meant to line the base of the display. Her hands were tired. Her feet ached inside shoes that had never been designed for 12-hour shifts. But her eyes kept drifting upward, toward the billboard, the way they had every night that week. "Everyone's heading to the staff dinner," a coworker called out, gathering her jacket. "You coming, Zuri?" "In a minute," Zuri said. "I want to finish this row." The coworker shrugged and left. The door swung shut behind her, and for the first time all week, the hall went completely silent. Zuri climbed down from the ladder and simply stood there, alone, beneath the enormous face that had followed her from Nairobi to Seoul. "This is so embarrassing," she whispered to no one, laughing under her breath. 7 years she had watched his dramas. 7 years of learning a language that didn't come easily, of practicing lines from his shows in her bedroom mirror, of telling her mother that one day she would work in this industry, not just clean up after it. She glanced around one final time. An empty hall, a locked door, no cameras that she could see, and rose on her toes. She kissed the corner of the billboard, right beneath his printed jaw. "You know," a voice said behind her, low and amused, "most fans usually settle for a selfie." Zuri's whole body went cold. She turned slowly, already rehearsing an apology in her head, expecting a security guard, a manager, someone about to end her career before it began. Instead, she found the real Cha Hyun-woo standing 3 feet away, hands in his coat pockets, watching her with an expression caught somewhere between amusement and curiosity. I'm so sorry," she stammered, stepping back so fast she nearly knocked over the ladder. "I thought the hall was empty. I didn't mean. Please don't report this to my supervisor. I need this job. Relax," Hyun-woo said, holding up a hand. "I'm not going to report a billboard kiss to anyone. Trust me. It's not even close to the strangest thing that's happened to a poster of my face." Zuri didn't know whether to laugh or disappear into the floor. "This is mortifying." "A little," he admitted, and something about his honesty startled her more than a denial would have. "But it's also the first genuine thing that's happened to me all week." He tilted his head, studying her. "You're not Korean. Where are you from?" "Kenya," she said. "Nairobi. And you moved here for?" He gestured vaguely at the hall, the orchids, the ladder. "For this industry," she admitted. "I learned Korean because of dramas. Because of yours, actually, though I'll deny that if you repeat it." That earned a real laugh from him, unguarded. "I didn't move here because of you specifically," she added quickly. "I moved because these stories made me believe storytelling could change a life, including mine." Hyun-woo went quiet for a moment, and something shifted behind his eyes. The practiced charm falling away, just slightly, revealing something more tired underneath. "That's the first time in months someone said something to me that wasn't rehearsed." he said. Do you have somewhere to be right now? The staff dinner, Zuri said. But I told them I'd catch up. Good, he said. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Nobody photographs it because nobody thinks I'd ever go somewhere that doesn't have a private entrance. Come on. Let me buy you a coffee as payment for scaring you half to death. She should have said no. Every instinct told her this was reckless, that a man like him didn't just invite strangers to coffee, that this would be the kind of story that ended her career before it started. But she found herself nodding instead, and 5 minutes later they were sitting across from each other in a cramped alley cafe that smelled like roasted barley and old wood. And for the first time in years, Zuri Njeri felt like herself instead of a performance of herself. Can I ask you something honest? Hyun-woo said, wrapping both hands around a chipped ceramic cup. Do you ever feel like you're pretending every single day just to survive in a place that wasn't built for you? Zuri looked up, startled. Every day, she said quietly. At work, I smile and nod and pretend I'm confident. Inside, I feel like an outsider trying to earn a seat at a table that was never set for me. I feel that too, Hyun-woo admitted. Different reasons, different table. But I perform every hour of every day, even when the cameras are off. I haven't had a real conversation with someone who wasn't trying to get something from me in longer than I'd like to admit. What do people usually want from you? Photos, endorsements, my schedule leaked to a magazine, a quote they can twist into a headline. He shrugged, and there was something raw underneath the casual delivery. Early in my career, I had such bad anxiety I couldn't leave my apartment some mornings. I still see a therapist twice a month. Most people don't know that, and I'd like to keep it that way. I won't tell anyone, Zuri said, and she meant it. They talked for 2 hours that first night. About her sacrifices, the mother she left behind in Nairobi, who still didn't fully understand why her daughter had traded a stable life for an unstable dream. About his loneliness, the version of himself the world consumed daily, a version that felt less and less like the truth. Somewhere in that conversation, Zuri stopped being careful, and without meaning to, she began analyzing one of his old performances scene by scene, explaining exactly why a single silence in episode 4 had made her cry the first time she watched it. Hyun-woo set his cup down slowly. Say that again. What? What you just said. About the pause before I say her name. Nobody's ever noticed that except my director. I noticed everything, Zuri admitted, embarrassed. I've probably watched that scene 30 times. Stand up, he said suddenly. What? Stand up. Do the scene. The confession scene from episode 9. I want to see if you understand it as well as you think you do. Her face went hot. Here? Now? Right now? Reluctantly, feeling every bit of dignity leave her body, Zuri stood in the middle of a nearly empty cafe and delivered the lines from memory. Every pause, every breath, every crack in the voice she'd studied 100 times. When she finished, the cafe had gone completely silent, and an old man reading a newspaper in the corner was staring at her over his glasses. Hyun-woo didn't say anything for a long moment. You've been hiding this, he finally said quietly. Why? Because nobody in this industry has ever asked to see it, Zuri said. I'm asking now. He pulled out his phone. I'm going to introduce you to my manager. His name is Han Sung-jae. He's protective and a little terrifying, but he respects talent more than anyone I know. Sung-jae met them 2 days later at the same cafe, arms crossed, clearly unconvinced before Zuri had even said a word. Hyun-woo tells me you can act, he said flatly. Hyun-woo also once told me a stray cat outside his apartment understood him better than most people. Forgive me for wanting proof. Zuri didn't flinch. What would you like to see? Nothing rehearsed. Give me something cold. So she did, a short, unscripted monologue about missing her mother's cooking, delivered with no preparation and no safety net. When she finished, Sung-jae sat in silence for a long moment, tapping his pen against his notebook. That wasn't in any of his dramas, he said finally. No, Zuri said. That one was mine. Sung-jae looked at Hyun-woo, then back at her, something in his expression softening for the first time. Fine. I'll make calls. But if this becomes a scandal instead of a career, I will personally make sure neither of you enjoys the consequences. For the first time since she'd landed in Seoul 3 years earlier, someone in the industry looked at Zuri and saw an actress, not an assistant, not a foreigner, not a mistake waiting to happen. But reality doesn't change overnight just because one person believes in you. Encouraged by Hyun-woo's introduction, Zuri began attending auditions on her days off, memorizing scripts before dawn, rehearsing in bathroom mirrors between shifts, and reality, as it often does, proved brutal. "Your Korean is impressive," one casting director told her flatly, "but audiences won't relate to you. We're looking for someone local," another said, not even glancing up from his clipboard. "You're talented," a third admitted, almost as an insult, "but not for this role. Maybe never for this role." One casting director didn't even let her finish her lines. "Stop," the woman said, waving a hand. "I can already hear it. It's good, but it's not what the role needs. Do you understand? It's not about talent. It's about what the poster looks like." "What does the poster need to look like?" Zuri asked, quietly furious. "Familiar," the casting director said, without a hint of apology. Each rejection chipped away at something inside her. After the 5th failed audition, Zuri sat alone on the subway platform at midnight and allowed herself, for the first time in months, to cry. She almost quit that week. She had her resignation letter drafted in her phone, her flight already searched, when Hyun-woo showed up outside her apartment building holding 2 cups of coffee and refusing to leave until she let him in. "I failed dozens of auditions before anyone gave me a chance," he told her, sitting on her front step because she hadn't invited him inside. "Directors told me I lacked charisma. One agency dropped me after 4 months and said I'd never make it in this business. Everyone has a version of your rejection letters, Zuri. The only difference between the people who make it and the people who don't isn't talent. It's whether they're still standing in the room when the right door finally opens." He looked at her directly. "Rejection doesn't decide your future. Quitting does." She didn't delete the resignation letter that night, but she didn't send it either. If you're feeling this story the way we are, take a second right now and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need a story like this one. Now, back to Zuri and Hyun-woo, because everything is about to change. Zuri didn't book a leading role. She didn't book a supporting role. She booked a tiny commercial for a skincare brand, 4 seconds of screen time, 1 line of dialogue. It felt insignificant compared to her dreams, but it also felt like proof that the door existed, even if it was barely open. Then came a single speaking role in a low-budget drama. Then an independent short film that played at a small festival and earned her, for the first time, a review with her name spelled correctly. Each opportunity, however small, rebuilt something inside her that rejection had tried to dismantle. And through all of it, her friendship with Hyun-woo quietly became something neither of them had planned for. Late-night phone calls that stretched past midnight. Encouraging texts sent between his filming breaks. Quiet dinners after exhausting days, in restaurants far from any camera. Neither of them noticed exactly when friendship folded into something deeper, until one evening, walking her home through a nearly empty street, Hyun-woo stopped mid-sentence, looked at her under a flickering street lamp, and simply said, "I don't know when this happened, but I don't want to only be your friend anymore." Zuri's heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "I don't want that either," she whispered. Neither of them kissed the other that night. Felt too fragile, too important to rush. But something had shifted permanently, and both of them knew it. "Are you scared?" she asked him quietly, still standing under that flickering street lamp. "Terrified," he admitted. "You're the first person in years who makes me forget I'm supposed to be careful all the time. That's dangerous for someone like you." "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I've been careful long enough." They started small. A shared umbrella on a rainy Tuesday. A seat saved at a crowded noodle shop. A voice memo he sent at 2 in the morning just to say he'd had a good day because of a conversation they'd had that afternoon. None of it was dramatic. All of it felt, to Zuri, like the first honest thing she'd built in Seoul that had nothing to do with proving herself to anyone. Not everyone was happy about it. Yoon Hae-rin, Korea's most celebrated romantic actress, had watched Hyun-woo's growing closeness with the foreign newcomer with a jealousy she disguised as concern. She had spent a decade building an image of untouchable elegance, and the idea that an unknown Kenyan production assistant might be standing beside Cha Hyun-woo at industry events infuriated something deep and possessive in her. During a script reading attended by directors, producers, and half the industry's most influential names, Hyun found her opening. "It's admirable, really?" she said loudly enough for the entire room to hear, her eyes fixed on Zuri. How far someone will travel chasing a fantasy that was never meant for them. Some people confuse admiration with talent. The room fell into an uncomfortable, suffocating silence. Zuri felt her face burn, her carefully built confidence threatening to collapse in front of everyone whose respect she'd fought so hard to earn. Before she could find words, Hyun-woo stood. "Talent isn't measured by nationality," he said calmly, his voice cutting through the silence with an authority no one in the room dared challenge. "It's measured by the work. And I've watched her work harder than most people in this industry who were handed their careers." He turned toward director Kang Tae-sik, who sat near the front, watching everything with quiet interest. "Ask anyone who's seen her audition tapes." "With respect," Director Kang added from the front row, not looking up from the pages in front of him, "I've read her audition tape notes. I'd suggest we focus on the script instead of the seating chart of who deserves to be here." He paused, almost to himself. "Though I'll admit, the studio's been pushing for years to put the two of you together on something. It would have made everyone's job easier." Hyun's jaw tightened, but her smile didn't waver. "Of course, Director. I only meant to protect the integrity of this production. Some of us have spent decades earning our place. It would be a shame to see that cheapened." "Nobody's place is being cheapened by hers," Hyun-woo said. "Unless you believe talent is a limited resource, and hers is somehow stealing from yours." The room shifted, uncomfortable murmurs rippling through producers who suddenly found their scripts very interesting. Hyun's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How touching," she said, defending her so passionately. "I wonder what the tabloids will make of that." She was right to wonder. Within 48 hours, the confrontation had leaked, and speculation exploded across entertainment sites and social media. Photos of Zuri, some real, some cropped and manipulated, circulated with headlines questioning her relationship with Korea's most guarded celebrity. That night, leaving the studio after an emergency meeting, Zuri walked straight into it. Reporters pressed against a barricade, phones raised, shouting her name in a way she couldn't yet tell apart from an accusation. A studio driver pulled her into a black car before she could answer a single question, and she sat there, forehead against the cool glass, watching her own face flash across a stranger's phone screen outside the window. The exact moment, though she didn't know it yet, that would replay in her mind for the rest of her life. The agencies panicked. Executives called emergency meetings. Hyun-woo was told, in no uncertain terms, that a scandal involving an unknown foreign actress could damage a brand built over 15 years. "Distance yourself," his agency director instructed him. "Publicly, immediately, or we pull our support from your next 3 projects." To make the distancing convincing, the agency arranged a solution of its own. A very public, very photographed dinner between Hyun-woo and Yoon Hae-rin, framed to the press as 2 co-stars quietly discussing the joint project the studio had wanted for years. Reluctantly, believing it would pull the cameras away from Zuri entirely, Hyun-woo agreed to attend one dinner. He didn't tell Zuri why. He simply stopped calling as often, stopped appearing wherever she was working, answered her texts later and shorter, if at all, and 3 days later, a photo of that dinner reached her anyway, captioned with exactly the headline the agency had hoped for. Zuri stared at the photo for a long time, feeling something cold settle in her chest that had nothing to do with rejection letters or casting directors. "I thought what we had meant something to him," she told her roommate that night, the photo still glowing on the screen between them. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was always going to be an embarrassment he eventually traded up from." Heartbroken and exhausted, she began seriously considering something she hadn't considered in months. Going home. Back to Nairobi. Back to a life that made sense, even if it wasn't the life she'd dreamed of. She booked a flight for the following week and told no one except her roommate. This is the part of the story nobody who's watched this far can afford to look away from. So if you haven't already, tap that subscribe button now, because what happens next changes everything. The night before her flight, unable to sleep, Zuri returned one final time to the exhibition hall where all of this had started. The grand opening had long since passed, but the massive billboard of Hyun-woo still stood along the northern wall, illuminated faintly by emergency lighting. She stood beneath it exactly where she had stood 9 months earlier, and allowed herself a small, sad laugh. "I thought this was where my fantasy started," she whispered to the empty hall. "No," a voice answered behind her. "It's where our real story began." She spun around. Hyun-woo stood a few feet away, breathing hard, as though he'd been searching the entire city. "How did you know I'd be here?" "I didn't," he admitted. "I've checked 11 other places tonight. This was my last guess." He stepped closer. "Zuri, I need you to know the truth, because I think you've been telling yourself a lie for weeks, and I let you believe it because I thought it would protect you." "What truth?" "I never pulled away because I was ashamed of you," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I pulled away because an entire industry was ready to destroy your career before it even began, just to punish me for caring about someone they didn't approve of. My agency wanted a story to bury your story. That dinner with Hyrin, it was arranged, staged, a distraction they built, and I was foolish enough to agree to, thinking it would keep the cameras off you. I didn't know they'd leak a photo of it to you specifically, framed exactly the way it was framed. The moment I found out you'd seen it, I canceled every remaining appearance with her and told my agency I was done letting them use either of us as a shield. So none of it was real. None of it was ever real," Hyun-woo said. "Not for 1 second. I was wrong to let you think, even for a single day, that a fabricated photo meant more to me than you did." Tears slipped down Zuri's face before she could stop them. "I had a flight booked for tomorrow morning." "Then cancel it," Hyun-woo said immediately. "Please, not for me. For yourself. Because you have worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and come too far to let one industry's cruelty send you home before you've had the chance to see what you're capable of. And what if it happens again? What if they come after us again? Then we face it together, honestly, instead of me trying to protect you by disappearing." He reached for her hand. "I love you, Zuri. Not the version of you that kissed a billboard 9 months ago. The version standing in front of me right now, who rebuilt herself after every rejection this city handed her." "You should have told me," she said, her voice trembling between anger and relief. "Do you know what I told myself every night you didn't call? That I was a mistake you were quietly correcting." "I know," he said, and he didn't try to defend it. "I was so afraid of losing your career that I risked losing you instead. That was selfish, dressed up as protection. I won't do it again. If this industry wants a war, it can have one. But it won't have one where you're standing alone." Zuri wiped her eyes, laughing despite herself. "You're supposed to be the calm, controlled one. The one who never lets his image slip." "You've ruined that for me," Hyun-woo said, smiling. "Completely and permanently. For the first time since the humiliation, since the silence, since the fear, neither of them hid anything." She didn't board that flight. Days later, in what felt like a moment too perfectly timed to be coincidence, director Kang Tae-sik personally called Zuri and invited her to audition for the lead role in his next romantic film, a role dozens of established actresses were fighting for. No favors. No recomendations. No mention of Hyun-woo's name anywhere in the process. She earned the role on the strength of a single audition tape that made director Kang's entire casting team go silent the way that Cafe had gone silent 9 months earlier. The night before the premiere, Zuri couldn't sleep. She sat on her balcony with a cold cup of tea, staring at the city lights, certain that everyone would see straight through her, that the cameras would remember exactly where she came from and decide it still wasn't enough. "You're allowed to be nervous," Hyun-woo told her over the phone. "But you are not allowed to shrink. Not after everything it took to get here. What if they still don't accept me? Then they'll be wrong," he said simply. and the film will prove it anyway. Months later, the film premiered in theaters across Seoul. Critics who had never heard her name before called her performance one of the most emotionally honest debuts of the decade. Entertainment headlines that had once reduced her to Cha Hyun-woo's rumored girlfriend now read differently. Kenyan actress Zuri Njeri delivers one of the year's most unforgettable breakthrough performances. She had become a star, not because of who she loved, but because of what she had refused to abandon. 1 year after the night she first kissed a billboard, she thought no one was watching. The exhibition hall hosted a celebration honoring the past year in Korean cinema. The same billboard, updated now with new promotional art but standing in the exact same spot, watched over the room like a quiet witness to everything that had happened beneath it. Hyun-woo found Zuri near the entrance, elegant in a way that made half the room turn to look, though she barely noticed anymore. "Thinking about kissing the billboard again?" he asked, a familiar teasing warmth in his voice. Zuri laughed, the sound easy and unguarded. "Why would I?" she said. "When I already have the real man standing right in front of me?" This time, it was Hyun-woo who closed the distance first. He kissed her in front of everyone. Producers, directors, photographers, the entire industry that had once tried to decide whether she belonged. Cameras flashed, one after another, capturing a moment neither of them had planned and neither of them wanted to end. Neither of them flinched. Neither of them looked away. Neither of them apologized for a love that had once been forced into hiding. Somewhere in the crowd, Han Sung-jae watched the two of them with his arms crossed, the ghost of a smile breaking through his usual composure. Even director Kang raised a quiet glass in their direction. The industry that had once tried to decide whether Zuri belonged now simply watched her belong, without needing anyone's permission. Because sometimes, the most embarrassing moment of your life isn't something to bury. Sometimes, it's the exact moment your real story begins. If the story moved you, don't scroll away yet. Let us know in the comments which moment hit you hardest: the billboard kiss, the confrontation, or the airport that almost was. Subscribe to Story Nest Tales so you never miss a story like this one. Hit that like button if you made it to the very end, and we'll see you in the next one.